Hey folks, welcome back. I'm Dave and we're here in my shop where I build E-War guitars. This is going to be episode number 10 in the series where I'm building this guy right here. They're looking pretty cool. And it's the same series where I'm learning how to use my CNC machine over there. It's a Shark HD 510 and I'd never used one before and I never used the software before. And during this series I've been showing you all my learning experience figuring out how to use that thing. So in last week's video, I showed you how I fixed my little headstock screw up I did, and I got the laminations on the back of this fretboard. We cut out the fretboard, we cut our little design logos in here, and we got the thing glued on. Now in this video, we're going to go ahead and radius the fretboard. We're going to do our little epoxy inlays here and up here on the headstock, and we're going to radius the fretboard and install the frets. But before we do that, I wanted to talk for a minute about my experiences so far with the CNC machine. So the majority of the CNC work is completed on this guitar, and I just wanted to take a minute and give you all my perspective as far as getting the machine and learning how to use it at this time right now when the thoughts are really fresh in my mind. So I'm the kind of guy that really likes a challenge. I mean, I love trying new things. I love learning new stuff. I love getting my hands dirty and making sawdust, and I really get into all that. But for some reason, I was really dreading figuring out how to use a CNC machine, and mostly dreading sitting down and learning new software, learning design software, Adobe Illustrator, and then using the Vectric V-Carve. I mean, I was just dreading it. I bought that CNC machine when it went on sale a long time ago, over a year ago now, and that thing sat in the box for probably 9 months. I never even opened up the box to look at it inside because I was just kind of dreading I was excited about learning something new, but I was dreading the learning process all at the same time. I mean, that's not like me at all. I'm usually, when something arrives that I've ordered, I'm usually ripping the package open before I ever get it inside the house. But in this case, it just sat in the box, which is very unlike me. So over the time that machine was sitting in the box, I slowly but surely started watching YouTube videos about Adobe Illustrator, and I watched YouTube videos about Vectric V-Carve, and I'd sit down at them every once in a while and I'd dabble a little bit and try to figure out what some of those buttons do. And I mean, it was all totally foreign to me, but every day I did it, I got a little more knowledge built up and I figured out a little bit more. And matter of fact, right now I'm designing my next guitar in Adobe Illustrator. My Great Guitar Build-Off 2022 entry, as a matter of fact. I know everybody else is about half finished with their guitars and I'm just getting started, but anyway, I had this thing to do and I had to learn how to use that machine too, so. But anyway, slowly but surely I started getting a handle on it and I started figuring it out, and you know, I feel like using this software has opened up a world of creativity to me. I'm looking at things in a different way than I did before. It's interesting how you start rethinking the processes you were doing before and how you can do it now, and you just sort of change your mindset, I guess, in doing it. And that process is going on right now, and as I'm going through this and learning all this. So now at this stage, I've really just started scratching the surface of both the design software and that machine. And I can tell you, it was totally worth it going through the learning process and the expense of buying the thing. I mean, I am really happy that I got it, and I'm happy I'm learning it. And it was just, like I said, it was totally worth it. I was really apprehensive, but I'm really glad I've added that to my shop here. And that, incidentally too, that's just one tool in this whole shop. I still use every other one of these tools in here because that's just one of many tools. It's not, I think some people get the idea that, you know, you get a CNC machine, you just kind of shove a piece of wood over there and out the other side comes a guitar. And that's just not at all the case. I mean, it is totally a woodworking machine. I feel like I'm totally woodworking when I'm using the thing. And it's just one of many tools I got here in the shop. Because I promise you, if I could do something faster on a bandsaw than I could do on the CNC machine, I'm going to do it. But at the same time, it does open up that world of possibilities and methods and processes that I hadn't done before. And that's just really cool. So if you're thinking about getting one, I highly recommend it. If you've got the time to spend learning the software and you've got the extra money to buy something like that, I would definitely give it a shot. Because once you're past that initial learning thing, you're going to be really happy you did it. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling on now. It's time to go ahead and radius up a fretboard and get rolling with this thing and get some frets installed. Anyway, I hope you stick around and check out the video. And if you dig it, how about you give me a like and subscribe? Anyway, let's get rolling with the video. Okay, so one of the next things I'm going to want to do is radius this fretboard. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and fill in my little 12th fret design here and fill in my EWAR logo up top here. And so what I'm going to use for that, I'm going to use this 5-minute epoxy, and I'm going to mix into it some Pearl X dust. This is Macro Pearl number 652. Cool looking stuff. I've done it before, and I just ran a little test piece yesterday to see how it was going to look. And so there's the EWAR, and here's my little 12th fret design. And so I think it's going to look pretty cool. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up, I'm going to mix it up here in this little cup, and we're going to put it in there, and in an hour from now I should be able to go ahead and radius my fretboard and resurface my headstock to cut that back down. So anyway, that is what we're going to do. So this is actually the whole reason I bought a CNC machine in the first place. I wanted to do little inlays on my fretboards and do these great little designs and stuff. And I just simply don't have the patience to do it by hand. So that got me started on the CNC machine. Of course, it's led to many other things than just that. But anyway, so this is me doing it. I'm putting a little epoxy together with some of that pearl dust. And now I'm just surfacing off the top. I've taken off 1/1000th of an inch with that surfacing bit. And it's all good. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is radius my fretboard, and to do that I'm going to use this jig right here that goes along with this guy right here. This is cut at a 12-inch radius. I'll swap out the base plate of my router and put this on it, and this will travel back and forth along these 2 aluminum rails and cut the radius on my fretboard. And it'll also cut off this excess epoxy I have on here on my little 12th fret design. So anyway, to do that, I've already checked and I am perfectly flat this way with my rails. I got 7/32 of an inch from the top of the rails down to the top of the fretboard. It's exactly the same on both sides. So now I have to get this centered up in my jig. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and mark the 2 ends. I'm going to find the center point on each end of the fretboard. Now up at the other end. So that's a great little radiusing jig I made there. I made it a couple years ago and I use it. It's pretty fast to use and it's simple to use and it comes out really good every time. I know you can radius fretboards on a CNC machine, which I am going to learn how to do. But you know, for now, this is pretty good. Like I said, using a CNC, it's a combination of CNC and your other tools, just not strictly a CNC thing. So I had to center that up first on that bottom. You see I have a piece of redwood laying in there. And I first center the neck up as good as I can on that. And then I use my wrench and my ruler to tweak it back and forth. That'll push that piece of redwood back and forth until it lines dead up in the center, because this thing has to be perfectly centered for your radiusing to come out good. So now I just pop the bottom off of my router, and I screw on the piece of plexiglass that's cut to fit on top of that block of wood, and then I set it up on top of the block of wood and I screw it down into that, and it works really well. And that block is, incidentally, it's radiused at a 12-inch radius, which you could do 14, 16, 9, whatever you want to do. I'm just checking height to make sure I'm riding real true with the top of that fretboard, because I don't want to change the thickness in the center. And then you just kind of run it back and forth. I'm set up there in front of my little vacuum system. It catches some of the dust, but not all of it. And you can see my little 12th fret design I got on there too. I think it looks pretty cool. It's plain and simple, but it's cool all at the same time. All right, so the next step in the process is to sand off this fretboard. Now the radius and deal I did really nice. Did a real clean job like it always does. I will tell you though, I used a 3/4 inch diameter 2-flute cutter to do this. I always used a 1/2 inch before, but the 3/4 was already in the router, so I said, well, what the heck, I'll go ahead and do it. And it's a little bit too wide. I think the 1/2 inch has a better, more rounded result. But still, I'm very close. I don't know if you could see it on the end there, but I'm very close to the final radius, and a little bit of sanding will clean that right up. But anyway, just a point to make that I probably would have used, I probably would have been happier using the 1/2 inch diameter bit instead of the 3/4. Anyway, I've got my sanding beam down here. This is the aluminum, this is the long one. I get it from Stu Mac. It's the long 12-inch radius sanding beam. I like the long one because it you can get just about the entire fretboard on it. So anyway, I'm going to hold it nice and straight. This 220 grit, I'm going to go 220, 320, and probably 400. I'm going to keep as even pressure as possible. And I'll do a few swipes in this direction. Then I'll turn around the other way, do a few swipes this way. So that radiusing jig, it got it really close. I'm really just cleaning up the tool marks. Now you can see I'm using my radius gauge to check to make sure it's all coming out true and everything. Well, you can see there, that's I'm saving that ebony dust. I got a piece of wax paper down there. I want to save that because I'm going to infill the end of these frets once we get the frets in place. So I'm taking it off every once in a while and saving it, you know, keeping that dust. Now here what I like to do, I like to take the last 4 or 5 frets and I basically plane that down at a very slight angle. You see from that green tape on. I stack up the two, I think I have 2 pieces of green tape on the fingerboard and 2 pieces on the sandpaper, which will give just the slightest little die off on the end of that fretboard. And I believe that helps me get a really super low action without getting any fret buzz on those higher frets. So now that it's radiused, I want to go back through and I take my fret saw and I put a little wax on it and I just run it through there to make sure I have the proper depth at the ends, because of course when you radius the thing you're losing a little bit of depth in those slots. So, and then I'll check it. I want to make sure, I want to get it really close. So if anything, I want a little extra depth. But not too much extra, just enough extra to make sure I'm not going to bottom out when I'm pressing those frets in, because those frets have to be tight to the face of that fretboard. So I just take a minute and go through and do that. And once that's done, I got a little triangular file, and I promise you, if you haven't done this before for fitting frets in, this is definitely the way to go. It makes it so much easier to install your frets if you just knock a little, you're kind of knocking a little V groove into the top of those slots with that tiny little file. Doesn't harm the effectiveness of the tangs grabbing or anything. It just really helps you put those frets in. So one last little thing I like to do before I stick the frets in this thing is I want to radius just past this 22nd fret. I'm just going to knock the corner of this fingerboard off down here so it'll kind of curve down towards the pickup. I always thought that looked pretty cool. So anyway, I got my little jig set up on here, just a straight edge, and I'm just going to run it in there, touch it to that a couple times, and it should be just that. Yeah, this is really easy to do. It takes about literally 15 seconds to do it. It just kind of gives you more of a finished appearance at the end of your fretboard. I like the way it looks. All right, so I'm going to wipe this fretboard down with a little bit of naphtha to clean everything out of the pores and get it cleaned up good. And then I'm going to put a very light coat of boiled linseed oil on it before I fret it to just kind of help seal it, help seal the grain a little bit. I'm going to use some CA glue for gluing the frets in, and maybe that'll help a little bit, keeping some of the glue out of the grain. Okay, while that's drying, I'm going to set up to do my frets. All right, so I'm getting ready to do my frets. I use this, this is Stu Max number 152. It's the medium higher, what they call the medium higher fret wire. It's nickel, and I've always used these and they work out pretty good. So I'm going to use them again. So I've already radiused one of these to a 12-inch radius right there, and I just checked it. It's just a little bit over a 12-inch, so it's bent slightly tighter than a 12-inch radius. Now I still got to run this one through, and I'm going to take you over here and show you how I do that. I was always buying my fret wire in the little packs of 24, the pre-bent, but they had gotten so expensive, it was finally worth it to me to buy this little fret radiusing tool, which works beautifully. And it cost me a little something in the beginning, but in the end it's going to wind up saving some money. Anyway, so that's it. Now I'm going to go ahead and start cutting them to length and get ready to put them in. So I've got that little board that's laid out there that I've got 24 holes drilled in it, and each one's numbered. And so what I do is I go through and I cut all the frets first, and I drop each one in its respective hole, and it just kind of helps me keep organized as I'm doing these frets. And I just clip them. I'm clipping them probably an overall of an 1/8 to a 3/16 of an inch longer than they need to be. And then once that's done, because I want to fill the underside of these frets with the ebony dust to where it looks like it's got binding on it, I'm going to go ahead and take my fret tang nipper and I nip off a little bit of the end of the fret tang, so I've got a bit of a recess under that fret that I could fill in then. All right, so I got a little CA glue here. I used the medium. I'm just going to drizzle a little bit down there in the gap. I'm going to start the fret with my hammer. And then we'll press them in with the I really like using that CA glue for this. It's the medium. I don't use the real thin stuff because the thin stuff will just kind of leak out everywhere. But the medium holds itself in there well. And so once I'll put 3 or 4 or 5 of them in at a time, I'll tap them in with the hammer. And then I'll turn around at the press and I'll press those and I'll do, 3 or 5 more. And I keep going that way. And it goes pretty quick. And I keep my towel right there too to keep that CA glue off of the fretboard. And since it's got the boiled linseed oil on there already, it kind of helps it to not stick to the face of the fretboard. And incidentally, I was careful too not to get any of the boiled linseed oil down into the slots, at least not that much. I kept it very thin on my rag when I wiped it on. and I kept it clean because I want that CA glue to grab good, both to the wood inside the slot and to the tang too. And I'm checking as I'm going too. I always look and make sure my frets are getting pressed all the way in tight. I think that's a half-ton press, and I torque down on it pretty good when I'm pressing those frets in. Now I'm just going to go along and trim off all the ends. This is my little beveled file for doing fret ends. I'm just going to run this on the edge here. Get these guys cleaned up a bit. So that little fret end file is set in that block at 37 degrees, I think. I'm pretty sure it's 37 degrees. But I will do two different things with it. I'll lay the block flat on top of the frets, which will put the proper bevel on the end of the frets. But then I stand it up on edge, basically, to where that file is running, you know, parallel with the side of the neck, which will kind of make sure that they're all cut back perfectly flat to the edge of the fretboard. And then I just go through and I get my medium CA glue again, and I'll just put one or two little drops right in the end, and I'll take a little bit of that ebony powder on my finger and just kind of rub it over the hole, and it dries up immediately. And I'll hit it with a little sandpaper too as I'm going. And it just dries the same color as the rest of the fretboard, and you can't even tell. I have that special little tip that on the end of my CA glue, which will allow it to drip right down those tiny little holes without making a mess of everything. And that's about it. Well, folks, I appreciate you checking out the video. I hope somebody got a little something out of it. I really dig doing it, and I'm loving my CNC machine, and this has just been a great experience for me. Anyway, I hope you all come back next week where we're going to carve this neck, by hand, of course. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. God bless you, and we'll see you all in the next one.